We as gamers are super quick to point fingers at just about anything if there's some aspect of a video game we don't like. Whether it be recycled content, microtransactions, or just anger at the developer for not listening to their community, there's a lot of things that video gamers say are hurting the video game industry and that make modern games, generally worse than things that came out 5 to 10 years prior to them. One of the biggest complaints that I've personally heard is nostalgia. There are a lot of people that think that our rose-tinted glasses, looking back on classic releases or even releases less than 10 years old, are really hurting the way that video games could be progressing. We're thinking too far backwards and not enough forwards. Instead of trying to drive innovation, we're trying to appease all these people that played games in the past, and they just want more of the same. So is nostalgia a force for good or force for bad? Is it hurting the video game industry, or is it something that we should probably consider going forward when designing new games? Welcome, boys and girls, to another topical video, and today's topic is, you guessed it, about nostalgia in video games and whether or not we should be embracing it or ignoring it, whether it be for new games, sequels, what have you. What actually got me on this topic and thinking about it is that I've been playing through The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time on 2DS. I picked up a Nintendo 2DS because, one, it's a lot cheaper than the 3DS. I don't care for the 3D gimmick on such a low resolution screen, and it was pretty dirt cheap. And it's been a great way to kill time while I've been flying here recently, and the game is so good that I've been, playing it just regularly if I want to sit on a couch and, just chill for a while. And it had me thinking about, this is a really old game at this point. It's definitely seen some years on it. It's from 1998. It released when I was 3 years old. And yet, I feel in this platform, even though it's been transferred from older, Nintendo 64 console to a handheld, the graphics have been updated. They do look better. It runs at a solid 30 FPS instead of 20. Unfortunately, not 60. But hey, handheld, I'll take what I can get. But there were a lot of things about the game that I thought, wow, this still really holds up like amazingly well considering its age. And other things that I thought, yeah, that's probably showing its age a little bit. I don't ever see developers getting away with that particular game design. So that got me thinking about, what is it that gamers really want? Do we want those kind of classic games, those type of classic motifs, storytelling, character settings, whatever it may be, to come back, to resurface? Or should we bury them and move on, try some new stuff? Before I dive full force into that particular aspect of the conversation, I feel like I should address the rising number of remasters and ports of past games. Now, even though that the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time game that I was playing does fall within this Venn diagram of, is nostalgia good or bad, it's actually kind of on the outside of it, because I feel like remasters and ports are done more often than not based on graphical fidelity rather so than the type of gameplay that it offered at the time. Ocarina of Time, and maybe a few short others, may be among the minority where it's older than 10 years old and they just wanted to port it to a new platform because that was a new way to play. But for the most part, I feel like that stuff like Halo Combat Evolved Remastered when it came out for the Xbox 360, stuff like the upcoming Call of Duty 4 remaster, and especially stuff like the Skyrim remaster, or Special Edition is its real name, a game that is being quote-unquote remastered only 5 years after its initial release. I feel like those are based more on graphical fidelity or playing them on a console or platform that was not supported at the get-go. Now, I'm sure that some of the successes of remasters are attributed to nostalgia, such as Halo 1. Oh man, I would love to go through this campaign again for the first time. That's what I thought in 2011 when they remastered it. Thinking maybe the new graphical updates will help me re-experience it for the first time. But really what it's boiled down to for the most part is, A, I don't have that console anymore because it's so old and I would like to replay it again. Or B, the platform that I currently have, it looks pretty shit because it came out 9 or 10 years ago compared to the stuff I'm playing now. And I would like to play a modernized version of it with better UI, with, a matchmaking system that actually works, or perhaps servers that actually are up, because some older games, remasters could be for just to bring back the community because there was no way to play online multiplayer, whatever it may be. But for the most part, I feel that remasters and ports, especially things that are done so soon after their first release, I'm looking at you, Metro 2033, and Last Light, although it was a good decision in my opinion, and things like Skyrim Remastered, things like The Last of Us, the port to PlayStation 4, those were done more for graphical fidelity and to play on a new platform, going from the 360 to Xbox One or PS3 to PS4 for Skyrim because they're not backwards compatible. So that's that part of the discussion. I feel like those aren't necessarily nostalgia, rose-tinted goggles that are causing them to release. It's more about I want to see that game in a prettier way or on the current platform I'm playing. Simple as that. What the game looks like and what platform you're playing it on isn't really as important to this nostalgia discussion to me. What is, what kind of game is it? What's its genre? What are the gameplay elements that were introduced in its design phase? Is there a certain art style or certain elements of the gameplay, or maybe a way that the story was told that just isn't mainstream anymore, that isn't done all that often? Or is it doing the exact same shit that today's games are, but you just think it's special because it was the first type of game that you played at that time? Now, there are a lot of people with a certain school of thought that think we need to eliminate this, it was better back then mentality. That this whole thought process behind, games used to be better. They used to, be handled with care. They were more innovative. They just don't have these type of genres anymore. That we need to, kill that frame of mind, because what's coming out now is higher quality than ever before. Even bad games are still better than really good games back then, and that we should just, throw away the rose-tinted glasses and look to the future. And to some extent, I do really agree with that point of view. Even games that today that I think, oh my god, this is so shit, I would still much rather play something like Destiny, which I did not enjoy whatsoever, but I would much rather had my hands on Destiny than 90% of the Nintendo 64 games I played, especially if they weren't first-party titles by Nintendo. There was just a lot of shitty software, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, especially if you were a PC gamer, oh boy. But games have generally evolved to a better state. Even the worst of the worst, you could probably get a little bit of entertainment out of it. And the games that you do pay full price for, even if they're not of, super high quality, you can at least, kill time in. There is stuff to do. You will get your money's worth out of it if you just try, for the most part. So yes, to a certain extent, I do agree that there is some, people who lived their prime years through a certain era of games and are just looking back and saying, oh, it was better back then, and you damn kids and your new fandangled hero shooters and MOBAs, and it'll never be as good as it used to be. And that sort of stuff, I think, does need to stop. And at some point, it will have to, because those people just aren't going to be playing new games anymore. It's as simple as that. If there's not a market that's catering to them, they're just not going to play that kind of stuff, and they'll stick with their either old stuff or they'll just stop playing. However, that's about the extent that I agree with the anti-nostalgia argument. I think the past few years of some being reboots, some being re-releases of classic titles have really solidified my frame of mind, thinking that nostalgia is actually a force for good. Let's take a look back to 2014 with the release of Wolfenstein. This was a surprise hit for me and actually ended up being one of my favorite single-player games of all time. I think I would have to give it Game of the Year for 2014. It's up there with Titanfall with me. I was absolutely blown away. But this is an old-school franchise brought back from the grave and, had a lot of gameplay elements from the original, but was able to mesh it with modern technology, our modern expectations for first-person shooters, but turn it on its head where necessary, and just ended up being phenomenal. The only thing that eclipsed it, in my opinion, was the new Doom game. Holy shit, was that single player incredible. I literally played through it in one setting on accident. I loved that single player. It was remorseless. It was brutal. It accomplished exactly what it wanted to do, and it had no apologies for it. What, did it have an incredible story? Not exactly, but you could get a lot of backstory and lore by picking up things, but it was completely optional. It was about labyrinth-like levels and shooting demons in badass ways, amazing audio design, amazing sound with the music, amazing visuals, and I loved it. And this is a franchise that we're talking about that dates back to the early 90s. What were things I loved about it? No sprint, a weapon wheel, no reloading, you just picked up ammo and you went along. You pick up health, you pick up ammo packs. We're talking classic enemy types, just a lot of motifs that were kind of buried under the either sci-fi shooters that were way too far right or modern military quote-unquote simulators or arcade style, Call of Duty type games that were way on the other side of the spectrum. And there really wasn't anything as far as arena shooter goes, nor, neither single player or multiplayer. Another worthy contender is Unreal Tournament, which is the footage that you're probably watching right now. Not Unreal Tournament Uno, the new Unreal Tournament that's being developed by Epic Games alongside with community creators and the general public. This is a completely free-to-play game that's still in pre-alpha. They have about 5 or 6 completely done maps and a bunch of shells that are work in progress that you could still play on. This game is more polished and playable than 90% of first-person shooters that are released day one. It's incredible. Not only does it look amazing with the new Unreal Engine 4, but it just plays so well. It's so refreshing, and it's a classic arena shooter, something that just didn't take hold for a long time. It was something that was missed out. Another game along the same lines is something that I've featured many times on this channel, Toxic. I cover every one of its updates. It's still in beta right now, but it came out, I think, even before Unreal Tournament and was another entry of, hey, this is something we haven't played in forever. It's a no-frills arena shooter with, inspiration from all over the arena shooter genre. And it's another one of those games that just scratches an itch that you couldn't scratch for the longest time with new releases. Here soon, we're going to have a PC-only Quake game called Quake Champions, another arena shooter by id. So I'm thinking that there's a general trend here that people are liking the arena shooter genre and they want it to come back. This is an instance where I think we have nostalgia to thank for it. We kind of burn ourselves out, I think, in the late 90s, early 2000s on having every different type of arena shooter out there. We started transitioning to either more sci-fi games like Halo that were, really far out there, or military games like Battlefield or Call of Duty that were, sprint, very few shots to kill, low time to kill, either larger scale or smaller scale, not a whole lot of verticality to it. And now we see them coming back. And I feel like we have no one else but nostalgia to thank for that. These were just genres, these were just types of games that was not being fulfilled in the current games market. People asked for it, and ta-da, it showed up. Now, the arena shooter market is probably one of the bigger success stories that I've seen in recent years of a comeback genre. Real-time strategy games seem to be slowly taking their foothold back, with Grey Goo being a recent release that I've thoroughly enjoyed, and a couple other upcoming titles that I think are making real-time strategy games actually popular again. Now, what about the naysayers from before? What would they probably say about this? Oh, you're just nostalgic for that because it was what you played back then. These other games are better, and we should be, going forward instead of looking back. And there is, believe it or not, a lot of that sentiment. I've come across many people in real life that just refuse to try these older types of games, these styles that just aren't prominent anymore. They think, it's too old school. I wouldn't enjoy it. And that's just not the case most of the time. My biggest proponent for the nostalgia time frame, especially when I'm talking to these people, is, we don't have a nostalgic outlook on every game that's old. I don't personally look back at half of the Super Nintendo titles or Nintendo 64 titles I had and think, shit, I wish I could play that game. I wish I could play shit shovelware, 3 from unknown developer that cost a full price and I beat in 10 minutes, or that the game crashed, or it was too buggy to play, or it was just generally a shit game. We don't have nostalgia for those type of games. We don't just, think, oh my God, I love it because it's old. What are the types of games that we have a nostalgic outlook on? Well, they're generally good games. They may have had their flaws. Even playing through Ocarina of Time here recently, I could definitely see some flaws in it. For the time, they weren't as big of a deal, but playing more recent modern titles, you would think, this is a flub they would never let by, or this is a gameplay killer, or a time waster that just, it feels shoehorned in. But for the most part, especially during that time, it was just a revolutionary standout game. And most of the time, if you put it back into the current market now, it's still a pretty standout game and had a lot of elements that are worth exploring and worth expanding on today. Arena shooters certainly fall into that category. They just weren't being serviced here recently. They weren't being put out. There was nothing new with them. And all the other genres are pretty much being, it's a dead horse. It just keeps getting kicked over and over. So why have arena shooters just all of a sudden started to experience this resurgence? Well, it's just because there was a lot of good gameplay ideas that, wasn't around now. So that's why games with the names like Unreal Tournament and Doom and Quake are seeing, comebacks, because there were really good aspects of those older games. And when fused with modern technology and our expectations and the quality that has come out of modern game development, it can be a ripe pairing. So no, that's why I don't agree with the majority of the anti-nostalgia argument. We're not just nostalgic for every little thing, every little old game we played. There was something about it, something special, some aspect that we either haven't experienced in a long time or just wasn't done the same that we want back. That's why we want it. It's not because, it was the first most of the time, or I just really liked this universe or whatever. It's just because compared to today's offerings, it was just special. And as a side note, I don't think there's anyone buying yearly sequels because they were nostalgic for the first one, such as Assassin's Creed. I don't think anyone loved Assassin's Creed 1 or 2 so much that they're buying the newest Assassin's Creed game now. It may be a certain type of game they enjoy, or they just feel obligated to buy every one of the games with that, particular title to it. But I don't think that's the same thing as saying, I had such a good time with the previous one that I have to buy this one even though it's completely different. I know especially me, I'm not that way because I loved Call of Duty 4. I loved Call of Duty 1 and 2, actually. I certainly don't feel obligated to buy Infinite Warfare, nor did I feel obligated to buy anything after Modern Warfare 3 for the longest time. So that's completely different as well. So when you boil all this down to the root cause of games made today just aren't scratching the same itches that were, being scratched before with arena shooters or certain types of RPGs, it makes me think that what we're talking about isn't nostalgia at all. Sure, there are people that are just clinging on for dear life to some franchises or some movies, whatever it may be, just because it has a certain name. Hell, I don't think that Super Mario Brothers has survived as long as it has because of quality games for certain. But for a majority of cases, I just feel like the situation is that a market is out there that used to be served and that just isn't anymore. Simple as that. Arena shooter enthusiasts didn't have shit from like Unreal Tournament 3 on. Real-time strategy enthusiasts didn't have much other than a couple Warhammer 40k games. So really what nostalgia is kind of the same thing as going to a restaurant, getting a certain dish and thinking, damn, my mom used to make this a lot better. And then you go to your mom's house, she makes the same dish, and oh shit, it actually was better. It wasn't just you thinking on it and having some rose-tinted glasses, it was actually better. So nostalgia with video games most of the time boils down to, I just want a better damn video game. And that's why I think nostalgia as a whole is good for the video game industry. It keeps us in check. It keeps us in line with, this is what was good, back then. We've made these advancements. Is it still good now? And if it is good and there's no new games coming out quite like it, maybe it's time to revitalize a genre or bring back a classic character if that's the case. And I think games like Doom and Unreal Tournament, the upcoming Yooka-Laylee, which is a Banjo-Kazooie spiritual successor, are just testaments to that fact. Nostalgia is not a bad thing. It's just that there are games coming out now that do not, scratch the same itch as before. And the wonderful thing about the game market is that there's just so much coming out, there's so many people in it now, and there's so many people supplying us with it, is that all of these different genres and types of games, both nostalgic and innovative, they can exist in the same place and both be very successful. We have genres that even I don't particularly super care for, like hero shooters, except for Lawbreakers. I have actually enjoyed that one a lot. Coming out that, has a whole new audience, that's completely captivated by these type of games. And, we have arena shooters on the other side that, are pure, everyone's on the same gameplay level. Everyone just goes around, picks up weapons, and kills each other, and they can exist in the exact same space without overlapping, without hurting one another. And I think that's fantastic. So next time you hear someone talking about how they just don't make games the same way they used to, or that they really need to bring back a certain franchise or genre, don't immediately write them off as just having this unrealistic positive outlook on the past. There's probably some grounds for their outlook. There's probably something that was really good about what they used to play that just isn't there anymore. I know as an arena shooter fan, I could not be happier this year. I got Doom, which was an amazing single-player game. Didn't care for the multiplayer, but hey, the people that did single-player wasn't the people that did multiplayer, so you can see the fucking problem right there. We have Quake coming out soon. We have Unreal Tournament in pre-alpha that is already playable. It's amazing fun. We have Toxic, which I've really enjoyed, small community that I love hanging out with and talking with and making videos for. I'm in hog heaven, and that was something that just wasn't around for the past 10 or so years. So I see nostalgia as a great thing, and I hope people that like other types of genres that are coming back, I hope they feel the same way, because I know I certainly do. So tell me in the comment section if there's, a certain type of genre or gameplay design that you think just isn't being represented well in today's market. Or tell me, your favorite game or your first game. Hell, I personally think that a lot of the remasters and ports are being wasted nowadays, and that stuff that's, being done is just too new, especially stuff like Skyrim. It's nice, and there's a lot of free stuff out there and a lot of technical advantages, but I think stuff like really old PC games or text-based adventures or stuff that just doesn't run on modern hardware, that stuff are, people are really nostalgic for, that's great. That's a great opportunity to bring that kind of thing forward. So if you have that kind of outlook on old games, I'd love to hear them. Give me recommendations for old stuff if I haven't played it. I'm all about, revisiting stuff from the past. And yeah, that'll be about it, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Let me know what you think, if nostalgia is a problem or not in the gaming community. And we'll see you in whatever next topic it is next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.